Once again at Exodus chapter 15, verse 24. And the people murmured against Moses, saying, What shall we drink? Notes, 3 days before the children of Israel were rejoicing on the shores of the Red Sea. Now, some 72 hours later, they are murmuring against Moses. Such presents a lack of faith. Tests brought upon us by the Lord portray what is actually in us. Regrettably, it doesn't take much to bring out the unbelief. Verse 25. And he cried unto the Lord. Notes. Now Moses set a pretty good example. There is no help outside of the Lord, but man, even the church, seem to find difficulty in believing this. Scripture, and the Lord showed him a tree. Notes. Now this one is pretty obvious. The tree is a type of the cross. You can find more in Acts chapter 5, verse 30, chapter 10, verse 39, chapter 13, verse 29, all of the book of Acts. You can even find some in Galatians and Peter's, but we're going to go ahead and continue. Scripture, which when he had cast into the waters were made sweet. Notes once again. We must put the cross into every difficulty and problem of life, which alone holds the answer. Only by this means can the bitter waters be made sweet. Scripture, there he who is God made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them. Notes, that would have been, the words proved them would have been more properly translated as tested them. We must understand that God doesn't give victory to men, only to Christ. His victory becomes ours as we are properly in Him. You can find that in John chapter 14, verse 20. You can also find it in Romans chapter 6, verse 3 and onward. Verse 26. And said, If you will diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord your God, and will do that which is right in His sight, and will give ear to His commandments, and keep all His statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon you, which I have brought upon the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. Notes. It is demanded that all these statutes and ordinances be perfectly kept. However, no man can boast of such. Christ has perfectly kept all the commandments, and as our substitute, kept them perpetually. Looking to Him, we can claim this blessing. As well, the healing promised here has to do not only with the physical, but as well of emotional and even spiritual diseases. The cross is to be put into the bitter waters of our lives, whatever they may have in them. They can be made sweet. The name Lord in the Hebrew as used here is Jehovah Rophika, which means Jehovah the Healer. Jehovah has proven Himself as the deliverer of Israel, and now He proclaims Himself as their healer. Verse 27. And they came to Elim, Elim, where were 12 wells of water. Notes. The number 12 is the number of God's government, but we must remember this is God's government and not particular governments devised by man. It symbolized the 12 tribes of Israel and futuristically the 12 apostles on which, in a sense, the new covenant would actually be built, because they were eyewitnesses of Christ regarding His life, ministry, crucifixion, resurrection, ascension, and by faith His exaltation. Scripture, and 70 palm trees. Notes. The 70 palm trees are symbolic of ministry, which must be built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ Himself being the chief cornerstone. You can find more in Luke chapter 10, verse 1, and all the way through 17. Scripture, and they encamped there by the waters. Notes. Yeah, this signals the place in which the believer is to rest. As long as the doctrine is Jesus Christ and Him crucified, which speaks of the foundation, typed by the 12 wells of water in the ministry, typed by the 70 palm trees, Christ will be found in all His glory and will be to the believer what He desires to be. Chapter 16 of Exodus. We're going to talk about the wilderness, and oh boy, there's going to be problems. And they took their journey from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came into the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month after their departing out of the land of Egypt. Notes, this first verse tells us that the children of Israel had been on the road exactly 1 month, having left Egypt the 15th of the first month. It must be remembered that the pillar of the cloud led them in the direction, and yet it was a direction that seemed to be most inhospitable. But the Lord had a purpose for this direction. Verse 2. And the whole... little throat problem there. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. Notes, it speaks of the entire congregation, meaning that there is not a single one left out. If we murmur against God's man or woman, we have, in effect, murmured against God. Here was the self-same people who had been divinely spared from the 10 plagues of Egypt, who had been brought forth from the land of bondage, miraculously delivered at the Red Sea, divinely guided by a pillar of cloud and fire day and night, now murmuring and complaining and rebelling. How stupid. These people were they were without excuse. They had the presence of God so strong in their life that, some people may chuckle at this, but I use this as an example. They could have picked up rocks and hit him in the back of the head if they wanted to, because his presence was so strong in their lives. And yet, what do? They sit down, they suck their thumbs, and they turn into a bunch of whiny babies. God is looking for can-do type people, and as you're going to see in the upcoming chapters, He gets rid of those will-not people. Verse 3. And the children of Israel said unto them, Would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt. Notes. As we read these words, we are reading an oath. This means that their sin was aggravated by an oath. They took the divine name in vain. The future proves the fact that they got exactly that for which they asked. They didn't die in Egypt, but they did die in the wilderness. As believers, we must be very careful as to what we say. Scripture. When we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. Notes, they lied. They flat out just lied. As slaves of the merciless monarch, there is no ground whatsoever for us to suppose that they sat by the meals and ate bread to the full. Unbelief is always based basically on a lie. Scripture. For He hath brought us forth into this wilderness to kill the whole assembly with hunger. Notes. Now God had promised that they should worship Him at Sinai, which means that they were going to make the trip. That's in chapter 3, verse 12. Consequently, it was not possible then for them to die of hunger in the wilderness. In the face of difficulties, we tend to forget the promises of the Lord. And I promise you, we'll pick up in Exodus chapter 16, verse 4. Thank you.